Lucy couldn't help thinking about her new driver as she worked. What was she going to do about all of this? It really didn't make sense to her that of all people in the city that could have been employed, it just happened to be him. Why? She wondered as she stood up from her seat and started pacing her office. She needed to talk to Sonia about it before she would explode, so she paused long enough to pick up her phone and dial Sonia's number before she started pacing again. Baby. Sonia greeted with a yawn as she stretched out on her bed. Don't tell me you just woke up. Wait. Did you sleep with Brian Hanks? Lucy asked excitedly. Who says sleep with these days? Come on, love. You should summon up courage to use the appropriate words. Keep up with the trends. You should try saying words like fuck, smash, shag, score, screw, bone, nail, pound, bang, etc. There is just so much I need to teach you. Sonia said with another yawn. Wow. Is that all you ever think about? Lucy asked in amusement. She hadn't realized there was this much words to describe something as simple as sex. Well, that's how I came into the world after all. Sonia said with a giggle as she sat up on her bed. She hadn't realized she had slept for so long. Whatever. So did you shag or bone him? Lucy asked, deciding she preferred the sound of shag to fuck. Fuck sounded too raw and unrefined. She closed her eyes when a picture of herself yelling fuck as Tom ate her honeypot crossed her mind. Shit, she muttered when she felt the fingers of lust gnaw at her lower abdomen. No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I jilted my darling fiancé. Sonia said with a giggle. She couldn't help wondering what he must be thinking. She could bet her last cash that he was relieved that she had left him in peace. He was in for real surprise if he thought she was that easy to shake off. Jilted? How? Why? Lucy asked in confusion, momentarily distracted from her own dilemma. Well, I think he's going to make a good muse for my next bestseller. Besides, I figured I need to put him in check. And tame him. So I'm just going to write about us. What do you think? Sonia asked with a grin as she picked up a pen and started scribbling down some ideas as it came to her. Write about the both of you? Do you think he's going to like that? Lucy asked curiously. Did he think I was going to like a random stranger walking up to me and proposing to me out of the blues and bringing unwanted spotlight on me? Well, I'm sure he was too selfish to think about that because he is handsome, wealthy and famous, and believes he can get away with whatever. So I'm not going to worry about what he likes either. Enough about my fiancé. I'm sure that wasn't why you called, or was it? Sonia asked curiously as she closed her journal and looked around her room, which looked like the home of a lunatic. No. Well, I'm in a mess. Lucy cried as her mind went back to her predicament. What is the problem? Sonia asked as she placed the phone on loudspeaker and headed for the bathroom. She dropped the phone by her bathtub and lowered herself to the toilet seat to ease herself. Well, I got an official car and a driver, yay. Good news. Congratulations to us. Sonia said excitedly, and the driver happens to be Tom, my one-night stand who is also my next-door neighbor. Lucy concluded, double yay. Sonia exclaimed with a giggle, double yay, yeah. Like yay. Yay. I'm super excited on your behalf. The days of your boring lifestyle is about to end. Sonia said as she cleaned up and flushed the toilet. Come on, Sony. I'm being serious. How am I going to face him? Well, you don't have to face him. You can have it from behind. Sonia laughed at her own joke, but seriously, Lou, you're damn lucky girl. Now you can have sex everywhere you go. In the house, on your way to work, and even in your goddamned office. I really want to be you right now. Can you send me a picture of his looks? I really want to know how hot he is. Sonia said dreamily, you're not being helpful. Lucy complained, okay, come on. What do you want me to say or do? Go on, I'm listening. Sonia said as she picked up her toothbrush, applied the apple mint flavored paste on it and started to brush her mouth. What if he is stalking me? I don't think any of this is coincident. How can I just keep running into him everywhere I go? Lucy complained. Sonia paused her brush halfway and spat out the foam in her mouth. Well, technically, from what you said yesterday, I would say he should be the one thinking you're stalking him, and not the other way around. Now let me explain. First of all, Ludus is his city, and you moved over there. Secondly, you met him at the club. I mean, he was there before you got there, and your seat was placed right next to his, right, and then you moved into the apartment next to his. You went to his apartment last night, right? Did it seem like he just moved in? Sonia asked logically. No. Lucy said, beginning to feel stupid for being suspicious of an innocent man. Now if he has the power to get any position in your company, why would he want to be your driver when he can easily be your boss, or work in your office with you? Why would he want to work beneath you as your driver? Sonia concluded, I guess I'm overreacting. Yes, you are. So just take in a deep breath and relax. I think you feel this way because you're attracted to him and you're trying to run from it. Maybe another dose of his penicillin would make you all right. Sonia said with a giggle, making Lucy roll her eyes. You're just too corrupt, whatever. You better put your driver into good use, Lou. If I were you, I'd have him driving me off the edge of my bed with his rod. Sonia said with a grin, and laughed out loud when she heard the disconnect tone. At 26, Sonia was 5 feet 6 inches tall, and had the body of a senior high school baseball team cheerleader. Her honey-colored skin was flawlessly smooth, and her long curly blonde hair framed her beautiful heart-shaped face. Her eyes, which were large on her small face, were a beautiful green, and gave her an innocent look which belied her mischievous nature. Sonia had a small smile on her face as she admired her reflection on the mirror after her phone call with Lucy. Not bad for a celebrity's fiancé, huh? She murmured as she checked out herself. She had actually been feeling quite low on morale lately until the incident with Brian last night, and now she felt vitalized. Soon the sound of Ed Sheeran's Shape of You could be heard drifting through her open window as she set about cleaning her room while dancing and singing on the top of her lungs. She paused when her eyes fell on the engagement ring which was on the table, and she picked it up and looked it over before sliding it down her finger. Perfect size, huh? Coincidence or fate? She asked herself with a crooked smile, and raised a hand to her lips when she remembered that they had actually kissed. The kiss had even been good enough to elicit a moan from her. But she would be damned if she was going to tell him how electrifying and satisfying the kiss had been. She wasn't going to be the one to feed his oversized ego. I'd settle for fate. I'm going to get him to fall in love with me, and then we are going to get married and have 2 kids. A boy who looks just like him, and a mini version of me. Sonia told herself with a dreamy smile. As a writer, she had wanted to make their meeting more memorable by leaving without a trace. She knew better than most that you often remembered people who leave without saying goodbye more than those who do. And that was what she wanted. For him to think about her, wonder about her, and then worry about her. She searched around the room for her other phone, which she had turned off because of all the calls she had kept receiving regarding the engagement. When she picked it up and turned it on, she saw different text message notifications. But only opened the one from her editor. Been trying to reach you, but I guess you're busy with your fiancé. The movie producer is even more interested in your story now that he has seen you're in a relationship with Mr. Hanks. Let's talk about it over lunch or whenever you're ready. Sonia rolled her eyes as she read it out. How typical. She muttered before scrolling to the sound recorder icon and tapping on the recording she had made of their conversation the previous night. She lay down on the floor of her apartment as she listened to their voices through her phone while the music kept playing in the background. After a while she sat up and jotted down her thoughts before dialing the line of her editor. I suppose you just turned on your phone and saw my text. So when are we? Throw out the first chapter of the new story. I want to start working on something different. Sonia said, cutting him off before he could finish. What? Why? But the story is good. I only asked you to do some additional work on the second and third chapters. He complained, of course I know it's good. But I want to work on an entirely different storyline. My new story is going to be about a stubborn and determined young lady who wins the heart of a playboy celebrity after fate throws them together. Sonia said thoughtfully. She wasn't going to write it in a way that would tell her editor or the world the true story between her and Brian, of course. She was just going to change the manner in which they meet, but leave other things the same. Is it going to be about you and Mr. Hanks? He asked in excitement. Not exactly. I will work on the first 3 chapters and send it to you via email. Read it and tell me what you think, okay? But we are still meeting, right? Remember, you're supposed to meet with the movie producer. He reminded her, making her roll her eyes. Just conclude with him. I'll be okay with whatever you both agree on. I need to focus on my writing, so I'm turning off my phone. Sonia said, and hung up before he could say anything else. She was just going to get right to work and distract herself for the time being. She would give her darling fiancé a week to miss her before reaching out to him again, Sonia decided with a smile. Tom checked his wristwatch impatiently, trying to figure out why almost every other person had closed for the day, apart from Lucy. It was almost 2 hours past closing hours already, yet there was no trace of her anywhere. Was she doing that deliberately to annoy him, or was she just trying to avoid him? Or perhaps she had taken a cab and snuck off without his knowledge? He dialed Harry's line when he couldn't bear it anymore. Sup? Have you dropped off your boss? Harry asked in a teasing tone. That's the exact reason I called. Did you assign something to her that is keeping her in her office for this long? I've been waiting here for almost 2 hours and she is still not out yet. Tom complained, making Harry chuckle. She is probably still busy in the office. I learnt she is a workaholic. Maybe you should check on her and remind her she has a driver who is waiting. Or better still, you could remain there like a good driver would until she is ready to leave. Harry suggested. Well, I'm not a good driver. I'm going up there. Tom said, and hung up immediately. Workaholic? Why was she working so hard? She was the head of her unit, so why was she doing all this when her subordinates had all gone home? He wondered as he locked the car and headed for the building. He flashed the security personnel by the door his driver's identity card before heading for the elevator. It wasn't until the elevator bell dinged that he paused to ask himself what he was going to say to her. He scratched the back of his head as he slowly made his way to her office. He was just going to tell her he was lonely and bored outside. And ask if she could take the work home or finish it the next day. He walked into her department office and stopped in front of her see-through door before tapping on it gently. She asked distractedly as she continued with the documents in front of her. He knocked again insistently since he hadn't heard her, and waited until she had raised her head from the document and made eye contact with him through the glass, before opening the door. He saw the surprise on her face and then watched as her gaze shifted to the wall clock hanging on the other side of the wall before she returned her attention to him once again. Lucy felt uncomfortable with the way he towered above her while she was seated. Despite the fact that he was standing by the door far away from her seat, his stance made her feel small, especially since she was wearing just a camisole which was tucked into her pant, so she reached behind her for her blazers which she had hung behind her chair, and put it on before standing up. I'm sorry to disturb you, but it's past closing hours already and, Lucy cleared her throat, I got carried away with work, and I forgot about you. You should have left. She said without looking at him as she looked down at her laptop and saved the file she had been working on before picking up the flash drive. You didn't ask me to leave. Besides, it's my job to bring you to work and take you home safely. I also have to take you around on, I guess I failed to mention it to you earlier. But I almost always leave the office late. So if you're going to have to always come up to interrupt my work this way, then it will be best we don't work together. Lucy said, cutting him off. Why? Tom asked with a slightly raised brow. Why what? She asked, looking at him with genuine confusion. Why are you implying I quit? Is this about me not being able to wait for you while you put in extra time at work? Or is it simply because you're uncomfortable around me? Tom asked, feeling slightly offended that she wasn't even apologizing for keeping him waiting. Lucy took in a deep breath to control her temper. Mr. Tom's jaw hardened. Tom is good enough, all right. Mr. Tom, if I remember correctly, I told you I was going to inform you when I'm done with work and ready to leave. And as you can see, I'm not done yet. Secondly, I offered you the option of going about your usual business and letting me drive myself around while you pick up your paycheck at the end of every month, but you turned it down. Finally, I asked you not to make any reference to our fling. I didn't do that. Tom pointed out, you did a moment ago. I didn't. I only asked if you were asking me to quit because you were uncomfortable around me. Tom pointed out, making Lucy take in a deep breath. She mentally counted from 1 to 10 before looking at him again. Fine. Let's just go, she said as she picked up her handbag and walked out of the office, leaving him to follow behind. Tom followed her, and immediately they got to the elevator. She moved to the far end of the elevator. Let me ask you a question. Would you be acting this way had we not known each other before now? Tom asked without turning to look at her, since she was standing at the far end behind him, while he was standing directly in front of the door. Lucy paused to consider the question for a moment. And how am I acting, asking me to quit on my first day on the job? Do you consider that as being fair? Tom asked as the elevator door opened and they both stepped out. Lucy said nothing as they both walked out of the building. Maybe she wasn't being fair, but she couldn't pretend to be comfortable around him. He had seen her naked, for crying out loud. What would you have done had you been in my shoes? How would you react if the situation was reversed? Lucy asked after a while as they both stopped by the car at the parking lot. I would have done what every other person would do. I would go with the flow, Tom said as he unlocked the car and got into his seat, leaving her to decide whether she wanted to sit at the back or ride in front with him. Lucy said nothing as she got into the back seat of the car. She needed to set the boundaries between them if they were going to work together. He was her driver at work and her neighbor at home. She had asked him to forget whatever had happened between them, and she needed to forget it too. Truly, had he not been her one-night stand, she would have found it amusing that her handsome next-door neighbor was her driver, and they would have gotten along quite well as friends, but now she just couldn't help being extra cautious around him. Tom, on the other hand, said nothing as he drove the car. He knew she was being cautious because of what she believed had happened between them, and he couldn't exactly blame her. He just didn't like that she didn't seem to think she owed him an apology for keeping him waiting without giving him prior notice. And he also didn't like that she kept trying to ask him to quit every little opportunity she got. I'm sorry, Lucy said after fidgeting in her seat for some time. Even if he resigned from her job, there was no way she could ask him to move out of the apartment next to hers. She was going to have to face him every day, and if that was going to be the case, it was better they run into each other as friends rather than enemies. Tom met her gaze through the rearview mirror, wondering why she was apologizing all of a sudden when she had been acting like a boss lady just a moment ago in her office. She wasn't the type of person to delay the inevitable, so it was best she did this and got it out of the way. I know you must think I'm a mean bitch, Lucy said with a self-deprecating smile, and waited for him to assure her he didn't think so. But when he said nothing after some time, she decided to continue. I actually do close late most of the time. I get carried away with work, and since I don't have friends around to hang out with, or better put, since I just don't like hanging out, I try to spend the time working so that I will be exhausted by the time I get home, and then sleep off. Lucy explained, I'm not saying this as an excuse. I'm just trying to say I didn't keep you waiting intentionally. How boring, Tom murmured. What? I beg your pardon? Lucy asked, sounding partially confused and offended at the same time. I mean your life. It must be very boring. It isn't. That is just how I love it, Lucy said defensively. Or maybe that is because that is the only way you know to live, Tom suggested in a challenging tone. I can have fun when I want to. Lucy snapped at him, really? Like your little checklist? Tom asked dryly. A rosy blush flushed her cheeks at that. Do you always have to keep referring to the past? There is no future without the past. We have to make reference to it at some point. Tom said in a matter-of-fact tone, without taking his eyes off the road. Lucy took in a deep breath. Anyway, that wasn't the point I was trying to make. I was trying to say maybe I've not been fair. It was a two-way thing after all, and you were kind enough to offer yourself, so I shouldn't, really? One minute you don't want me to talk about our fling and then the next you bring it up? You can bring it up at will whenever you like, but I can't? Tom asked incredulously, making Lucy grit her teeth. Why was she beginning to feel like he was in charge of the conversation? Sitting at the back seat now was making her feel like she was a child being scolded by her father. I was only trying to make a point. Lucy defended weakly. Which is? Tom asked, cocking a brow at her through the rearview mirror. Let's just start all over. Lucy suggested. Tom resisted the urge to chuckle. Do you realize that would mean it's the fourth time we've met for the first time, huh? Lucy asked in confusion. The first was at the club. The second was at your apartment while you were pretending not to know who I was because you somehow happened to believe I won't recognize you because of your glasses. And the third was you pretending not to know me when your boss was introducing me to you earlier. All within a space of 48 hours. Tom said, sounding amused. Lucy didn't miss the humor in his tone, so she smiled. I know you must think I'm weird. And a little scatterbrained, she added to herself. Weird doesn't even cut it. Tom said honestly, making her giggle. What lady doesn't like a fine-looking man with a good sense of humor? The fourth time could be the charm. That was supposed to be the third time. But are you sure you want us to start afresh for the fourth time? Yes. That's the only way this can work. Let's start all over. But as friends this time. Lucy offered. If I'm your friend, I'm going to want to hang out with you every chance I get. I'm going to break every wall you set up and be in your space until you want to spend all your spare time with me. Are you sure you still want us to be friends? Tom asked as he parked the car in front of the apartment block and turned to look at her. I don't think you or anyone else can make me do that. Even my best friend, who is very outgoing, couldn't accomplish that. Lucy said with a confident air as she opened the door and got out of the car with her handbag in one hand. Is that a challenge I hear in your tone? Tom asked as he got out of the car and locked it. Make of it what you will. Lucy called out with a shrug as she turned around and started heading for her apartment. Contrary to popular opinion, Tom didn't become the CEO of such a powerful first-class multinational company like iGlobal by chance nor by luck. Several times he had read articles where people tried to guess his business secrets and strategies, and he smiled each time they failed. All his life he had been guided by 4 basic character traits. He liked to believe his success was a product of all 4 in equal percents. 25% impatience, 25% decisiveness, 25% planning, and 25% had to do with his appearance. These were the secrets to his success. He didn't believe in wasting time thinking about things when he should be working hard at it to get it done and over with. So his impatience always spurred him to look for every possible ways to get things done quickly. Right from when he was a kid, he had always been known as someone who always knew what he wanted. Once he saw what he wanted, he threw everything he had into getting it, unless he didn't really want it. Once he saw what he wanted, he never pursued it without thinking it through. He always spent his time making plans and writing out every possible way he could achieve his goals. And finally, because he was good-looking, he always found his way around. Everyone loved a good-looking person, of course. Lying down on the recliner in his new apartment, Tom tapped a pen on his forehead as he tried to come up with ways to get Lucy. He was very certain she expected him to make his first move on her tonight, but he wasn't going to do that. He needed to come up with a good plan on how to get under her skin without her even knowing it. He wanted her to feel so relaxed around him that she would let her guard down without knowing what was happening. She was a virgin, so there was no need trying to seduce her. Not that he wouldn't do that later though, but but right now he wanted to become a close friend and confidant first. But he didn't intend to remain in the friend zone for too long either. He sat up and picked up his phone. This was one of those times he needed his sister's wit, so he dialed Jade's number. A moment later he heard his sister's voice. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure twice within 24 hours? She asked, checking the time on her wristwatch. He had called quite late the previous evening, but it was kind of early now. I just wanted to know how you were doing. Tom lied, although that is awfully sweet of you, but I'm very sure that isn't the reason you called. She said in amusement, why would you, really, Tom? Go on, I'm listening. She said, cutting him off as she stood up from her desk and rubbed her eyes. Tom sighed wearily. He couldn't help feeling embarrassed that she had seen through him as usual. Fine. There is this girl, a girl? Jade asked with a giggle, since that was the last thing she had expected him to talk about. Tom was all about his business and money, and though he had had different girlfriends over the years, but she doubted he had ever given them much thought. Why is it funny? Tom asked in confusion. Nothing. Nothing at all. Just go on. I'm sure she must be very interesting if you're thinking about her. Jade said thoughtfully, well, she works for me. When did you start mixing business with pleasure? She interrupted again. I suppose there is always a first time. Now can you listen without cutting me off? He pleaded. Sure. Sorry. I think I'm still in lawyer mode. She apologized with a giggle. I really like her and I want her, but she is so damn stubborn and self-sufficient. How do I get her? Tom asked curiously. She knows who you are and doesn't want you? Jade asked in disbelief. No, she doesn't, but, sorry to cut you off, bro, but if I'm going to be of any help to you, then you have to give me details. How did you meet her? Why do you want her? What is she like? Jade asked as she picked up a jotter and a pen. Call it habit, but she liked organizing her thoughts. I met her the club. Tom started, so that is it. He finished, holy shit. You mean you actually bought the apartment she is living in just because you wanted to be her next-door neighbor? She asked incredulously. Well, let's just see it as a real estate investment. I could always sell the house if things don't go as planned. Right? He asked logically, and Jade had to admit there was sense in what he said, but then the money you paid to the occupants of the house, we both know it's nothing to me. Let's just think of it as the price I'm paying to pursue what I want. Tom said, making her sigh. So is it that you love her? I honestly don't know what I feel for her yet. I don't know her well enough to be in love with her, but what I do know is that I'm interested in her and I want her. Wow. Jade exclaimed with a giggle as she tried to process everything Tom had just told her. So what do you think? Tom asked curiously. Well, from all you've said, she is a good girl. And good girls like bad boys. Even though they won't easily admit that. So maybe instead of taking the gentleman approach, which I'm sure she must be used to already, you should be more fun. Be the bad boy next door. Jade suggested. A bad boy? Tom asked out loud as he thought about it. A bad boy would probably have fucked her silly that night, but he had acted the gentleman. Perhaps that was why ladies kept trying to use him? Because he seemed too kind and gentlemanly. Yes. You should probably ask Byron for tips. I'm sure he is the baddest boy in the whole of the country. Jade said with a giggle, and then remembered she was yet to give him a call. She made a mental note to do that immediately she was done with the phone call. Maybe I will do that. Now back to you. How was your day and how is the case going? He asked, sounding concerned now. I'm holding up. Things are becoming pretty intense, and my only witness has gone into hiding. She said with a sigh, the case is that bad, really bad. But if I'm able to do this, I think I will quit from this firm and start my own. She confided, just let me know if you need anything. You know you can always count on me. He said, and she smiled, sure. I need to get back to work now. Love you. With that she hung up and sighed. It seemed like both her brothers were getting all the romance and she was just here working like a maniac, Jade thought to herself.